Hey, how's it going everyone? Chris FD here, back with another video, and for today's video I wanted to focus on how to save thousands of dollars when buying a car. Two topics for this video, first one being how to understand the depreciation curve and finding that sweet spot between value and age, and second being bottoming out value of a car. So at what point will a car stop losing value? What age of a car will that be? So without further ado, let's just dive right in. Alright, so let's start off with a quick example to understand the concept of depreciation. Say you purchase a car from a dealership for $50,000. You drive it for a year and then you decide you'd like to sell it, but you're only able to recoup $40,000 of the original purchase price. That reduction of $10,000 is attributed to depreciation. So depreciation is essentially the product losing value over time from continuous use of that product. You purchase a car today, it's going to be more valuable today than it is tomorrow, etc. So this is how a typical depreciation curve looks like for a vehicle. As you can see, it's non-linear, so it starts losing much more value in its earlier years than it is in its later years. With this being said, we've all heard the common saying that the moment you drive off with a new car from the dealership, it loses 10% of its value immediately. Now, there is some truth to this in the sense that when you purchase a car from the dealership, you're paying a bunch of fees, taxes, and levies that you wouldn't be able to recoup if you were to sell the car again tomorrow in a private sale. However, without taking that into consideration, as you can see, a vehicle can lose up to 20 to 25% of its value after 1 year of use. That's pretty significant. If you were to purchase a car that's 1 year old, you can get a 25% discount in a sense from its original purchase price. We see this concept being utilized often in dealerships' year-end clearance sales where they're trying to get rid of old stock to make room for new stock. They advertise this as large cash discounts to the actual vehicle's price because at this point in time the car is worth 25% less than what it was worth when they were trying to sell it originally. Now, that's not to say that you're not getting a deal. At the end of the day, you're still getting a brand new car, brand new by the definition of it's at the dealership, no one has driven it, no one has owned it before. You're getting a brand new car that's a year old at 25% less than you would have purchased it 8 months prior. Now, purchasing a car after 1 year to get a 25% discount is pretty significant. And in some cases, if you use a year-end clearance sale, you're getting a brand new car that has never been touched before. However, this isn't my ideal targeted time to buy a car. That comes in year 3. A car that's 3 years old can see a depreciation of 45 to 50% of its original purchase price. Using that example from the first slide, a car worth $50,000 brand new, you could get for as low as $25,000 if it were to be 3 years old. That's significant. Now, as you can see from this curve, after the first 3 years of a car's life, it's reducing in value by up to 50%. It's starting to taper off drastically to the point where the following 3 years, you're only seeing an additional 15% reduction off the original price. So looking at that example in the first slide, a $50,000 car after the first 3 years, you're saving $25,000. But after the next 3 years, you're only saving an additional $7,500. That's a huge difference between the first 3 years and the next 3 years. Now, I wanted to touch on a few additional points as to my reasoning behind why I believe the best time to buy a car is when it's 3 years old. Now, using the example from the first slide, a car that's $50,000, what that looks at in terms of an actual dollar amount is a $50,000 car would be depreciating at an average rate of $8,333 per year in the first 3 years, but in the following 3 years, it's only depreciating at a rate of $2,500 per year. Now, this gives you a perspective of the severity of the drop off between the first 3 years and the following 3 years. Now, a car that's 3 years old will typically still be under warranty. A factory standard warranty is around 5 years for most cars. Powertrain wise, it's 100 to 150,000 kilometers, which a 3-year-old car usually would not be surpassing that unless you're driving it a couple hours a day every single day for 3 years. Even then, you're probably still covered for a little bit. Now, a car still under warranty gives you the benefit that any sort of mechanical issue that happens in the engine or the powertrain is covered by the manufacturer, which is crucial to ensure that you're getting a car that's in tip-top shape and there's no hidden issues upon purchase. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on is this is a very subjective point, but in my opinion, a car that's 3 years old is still relatively new in a sense that it's going to have access to some of the latest features and options that you see in vehicles today. It's most likely going to be low mileage and you won't have any sort of mechanical or body issues. And the likelihood that the car was in an accident that would result in body or mechanical issues is lower. Now, that's not to say that a car that's 3 years old, and I put an asterisk here, it's not to say that a car that's 3 years old would not have gotten in an accident at all. I mean, you can't predict these things, but a car that's 3 years old has a less likely chance that it was in an accident than a car that's 10 years old. Now, this is essentially my reasoning as to why I believe the best time to buy a car is when it is 3 years old. You're getting a car that's a pretty good deal, 50% off from its original purchase price, still under warranty, and in my opinion, still relatively new. But that's obviously subjective to the person. Now, the last point I wanted to touch on is the bottoming out of a vehicle's value. Looking back at the depreciation curve, as you can see, in the later years of a car's life, the depreciation is significantly less. In year 7 on, really what we're seeing is 2 to 3% depreciation each year, which is a far cry from the 25% depreciation in the first year that we saw. This can be considered as the car bottoming out in value. It's reducing at a much lower rate to the point where it's not really losing much value from this point on. An example of this that I wanted to show was the 2008 Audi R8. I know this is an odd car to look at, but this is a car that I was personally tracking since it came out in 2008 because it's a car that I do want to own at some point in my life. So when it came out in 2008, I've literally been tracking its price year over year. And what I'm seeing with this car now is affirming this bottoming out concept. Now, back in 2008, the V8 model retailed for about $160,000 Canadian, brand new. At the 7-year mark around 2015, these cars were typically going for around $75,000 on the used market, which represents about a 55% depreciation over 7 years. However, at the 12-year mark, which is today, these cars are currently going for anywhere from $65,000 to $70,000 as its bottom value. $10,000 difference between 5 years ago and today. If we use that worst case, that's an average depreciation of just 1.25% per year between 2015 and 2020. That is significantly less than the 50% that we were seeing over the first 3 years of a car's life. Essentially, in some cases, this 1.25% is covered by inflation. As the value is dropping, inflation's kind of covering majority of that. So in reality, over the last 5 years, this car has not really depreciated at all once you factor in inflation. This concept of bottoming out is seen with most cars today. Now, we start to see it once a car gets in the 7, 8, 9 year range of its life. At that point, it's losing value at a much lower rate than it was early on in its life. I do still recommend that the best time to buy a car in terms of value, in terms of all these things that I've listed, is at the 3 year mark. However, as you can see in this example, over the next 3 years, you're still able to save some sort of value. In this particular case, $2,500 per year for that $50,000 car. If you are trying to really get a car where you're not worried about it losing value at all, you would most likely be in the market to purchase a car at the 8 or 9 year mark of its life. So you're purchasing a car that's 8 or 9 years old. Today, in 2020, you'll be looking at purchasing a 2011 or 2012 car, or even older. And that would assure you that the car won't be losing much value at all. And if anything, it would just be, bumped back up by inflation. So just to recap this video, if you're looking to buy a quote unquote new car, something relatively new, and you want to find that great threshold between value and age, my recommendation is to buy a car that's 3 years old. However, if you're looking to buy a car where you don't have to worry about the value dropping at all or significantly at all, my recommendation is to buy a car that's 7 years or older. Well, that brings us to the end of the video. Thanks again for sticking around. I really enjoyed making this video for you guys. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up, comment down below, hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because ultimately your support will allow me to continue to grow and make higher quality content. So until next time, thanks again and take it easy.